Hello everybody, welcome to this most wonderful of digital experiences where we're going to be cooking with very simple ingredients and we're going to have a fabulous time, all in the name of a fabulous wine like Campo Viejo Rioja Reserva. We're going to be waiting a little bit for some of you to get connected. I imagine you're connecting from all parts of the world, I'm told. So we're going to give a few more minutes just for people who might have the computer on, but they might be doing something in the background to get seated, to get ready. The idea is that this is an experience where you get to interact, an interactive experience. So if you're in your kitchens, ideal, because then you're going to be able to follow me and cook this recipe. It's a very simple one, I say. It's not complicated, but we're going to be elevating a very simple product like the tomato into something extraordinary by adding some pasión, because that's something we do in Spain. Everything that has to do with celebrating life, doing so by eating and drinking fabulously, we do it with a lot of passion. Eating isn't like in some other parts of the world where it's just something you do to function. No. All our lifestyle revolves around the table, around gathering in the kitchen, before lunch, before dinner, then the actual sitting and enjoying of the meal. And then, of course, Spain is famous for its sobremesas, which is when you finished having your dessert, you just sit at the table for another 2 hours, just shooting the breeze, talking and enjoying life, shall we say, but in the comfortable seated position. Anyway, so gather around. Make sure you stay tuned. I'm going to introduce you to some of the actors that are going to be part of this play. We've got some anchovies and some Kalamata olives. Most of the ingredients are all Mediterranean, right? Or part of what we know as the Mediterranean diet. So we have anchovies and black olives and some oregano, which we're going to use to make a tapenade. That's going to give us a little bit of interesting contrast and strong flavor for our tomato. Then we're gonna have a beef tenderloin tartare, but not your typical beef tartare recipe. We're gonna do one where the meat is gonna be present, but we're only gonna dress it lightly with some pistachios, with a pistachio praline. I'm going to teach you how to make this from scratch. It's very simple, but if you can appreciate these beautiful pistachios, they're nice and green and peeled already. Well, we're going to bring out some of the interesting flavor notes from that dried nut. And obviously, we couldn't do anything with a tomato without some beautiful extra virgin olive oil made with arbequina olives, which are those cute small olives that are very typical here in Catalonia. It's where most of the production of arbequina extra virgin olive oil is centered here in Spain. So as I say, I'm using local ingredients that fortunately you must be able to find in most parts of the world, because this is a city of merchants and we make sure that our good products are shared with the rest of the world. Just like the Italians, they've been very good sellers of their materials, so are we. By now, in 2023, you can find most of the gourmet Spanish products in gourmet sections of supermarkets or specialized supermarkets, and we're lucky enough that we don't even have to go to the special ones. You can go to any kind of vegetable shop anywhere in Barcelona, and you're going to find a gorgeous tomato like this one. The thing about tomatoes, it's a seasonal fruit. It's not really a vegetable, it's a fruit, because of the seeds it has. And usually we think of the tomato as being the star of the summer. That's why in summer we have so many recipes like gazpacho, tomato salads everywhere, because it just grows really fast and it's everywhere. But luckily enough, because we have the formidable weather we have here in Spain, we're able to enjoy tomatoes like these all year round. And usually the people, the agricultures who specialize in exporting them usually have a great line of commerce where you are able to find these even in, I dare say, Helsinki in the month of December. Maybe not cheap, not as cheap as in the summer months, but that's why. It's a gourmet product, a simple fruit. But as I say, we're going to take this and we're going to elevate it into something extraordinary. We're going to add some pasión into this. To dress this tomato with olive oil, I'm going to give it an extra leap. Usually in our tomato salads, we always put tender spring onions on the salads, right? Well, what I've done today, what I've come up with is we're going to be using the green stalks from these Chinese spring onions. We call them Chinese spring onions here. Maybe in other countries you just know them as thin spring onions. Well, we're going to use the green part to make a green oil, because that is going to give it a freshness to our tomato salad in a way. And it's a way of not having the physical presence of the onion on there, but you're going to have the flavor. It's going to be a different way of enjoying it, mainly for presentation reasons. We've got salt, we've got pepper, that's always very important for the seasoning. And another wonderful guest partner for the tomato is always bread, right? Bread in Spain is religious. It's present in all our meals. No one sits at a table in Spain to eat without the bread. We cannot do anything without the bread. In this case, we're using sourdough. We're going to be making some croutons to introduce some crunchy textures into the plate at the end, so we have a little bit of crunch, and obviously the croutons always bring that wonderful kind of flavor because they're going to have a bit of oregano, a little bit of paprika in there as well, just very lightly, to add another layer of flavor to the dish, right? And as I said before, we're going to be having the tartare as like a little companion to the tomato. Now, usually in a lot of recipes, meat, whenever there's meat on the menu, meat comes first and then you have the vegetables as garnish. Here, we're doing things the other way. The main dish is the tomato, and the garnish or the little accompaniment is going to be the beef tartare, because a formidable wine, a red Rioja without meat, is also an inconceivable partnership. You know, it has to happen. Whenever you think of Rioja, you think of red meat, right? It's a perfect way to have it. In this case, we're not going to be cooking the meat. We're going to have it raw in a tartare, as I said. It's a perfect kind of summer dish, if you think of it. But we are going to give the tomato some temperature. That's why I'm going to ask you all to preheat your ovens at 200 degrees, because we're going to give it 10 minutes of a little bit of a blitz, just to dry up some of its extra moisture and concentrate the flavor, the natural flavor of the tomato. Last but not least, I've managed to procure some wonderful baby shoots, shall we call them. These are mustard leaves and basil leaves. So we're going to have a little bit of floral aromas right in the end. It's springtime, so there has to be some floral presence. Okay, so shall we get to it? Well, before anything, I mean, it's nice to have all of you on the other side of the screen, but it's even more nice to have a companion here in the kitchen with me. So I've chosen Campo Viejo Rioja Reserva as my best friend today, because cooking with wine is one of the most gorgeous pleasures that we can enjoy on a daily basis. Doctors say it, a glass of wine a day keeps the doctor away. It's also a staple of our Mediterranean diet. You have to think that people who live in this part of the world live long, wonderful lives. Catalonia, apparently, there was an interesting study that said that Catalan women are the longest living women on the planet because of one of the reasons, the healthy Mediterranean diet. Well, that's one thing, and also we do a lot of exercise because we have great weather, so we're always out and about. But one of the things about red wine in the Mediterranean diet is that it breaks down a lot of the fats that we eat. You know, we eat a lot of pork meat, we eat a lot of, you know, we don't deprive ourselves of the wonderful fatty foods, so we say. We have our charcuterie, which we're very fond of in this part of the world. We have our chorizo, our longaniza, our fuets, and all that. That's kind of greasy, and we have it on a daily basis. But because we have formidable red wines like this, Rioja, with most of our meals, well, it breaks down a lot of the fats, and that way it's what they call, in France they call it the red wine paradox, or the French paradox. I'm not sure. So here's to you. You see, it's lovely because this is a Rioja, this is a Reserva, which is obviously, it goes very great with meals, but it's also wine that's easy to drink in social occasions when you're meeting up with friends. Because it's got two types of Reserva processes. Usually when we talk about Reserva in Rioja, we're talking about wines that have spent between 12 and 24 months in oak barrels, right? Well, this one has spent its aging process in oak barrels, but it's also spent some aging process in the bottle, and that potentiates, I don't know if that's a proper word, but it brings out some of these wonderful flavors like fruit. I'm getting a little bit of cherry, black plum. Blackberries as well, old blackberries. And because of the oak, the aging process in the oak, I'm getting some pepper, some cloves. And if I smell, I'm not very well trained, but I'm getting a little bit of vanilla. And I dare say some coconut. I don't know what you think. By the way, this is an interactive experience, so feel free to send any kind of questions or queries in the comments section. I have my little screen here where I can read and answer any of the questions that you may have while we have our cooking process going ahead. So, now that we've got our preheated oven at 200, we're going to start with preparing our tomato. I'm just going to take one of these beauties. I'm going to take my gorgeous Japanese sharp knife, and we're going to cut 2 slabs. I call this recipe chuletón de tomate. Chuletón is what we call a steak, usually a beef steak, right? But because this tomato is going to have the appearance of a big, nice, generous slab on the plate, I dare call it chuletón de tomate, okay? So I just take the top off. Look at this. Admire the beauty, the ratio of pulp. It's a very pulpy tomato, this tomate rosa de Barbastro, from Barbastro, as I said, here very close by in Huesca, Aragon. It's the next region after Catalonia. And we have all this wonderful pulp, and then we have all this gorgeous sort of natural gelatin that keeps the seeds together. All that is extra juiciness. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful textures. Totally natural. This I reserve because this I can shave into tomato puree to use to spread on my toast in the morning. But what I want is a nice big fat slab. So I'm going to cut it. It's about 2 centimeters thick. Okay, look at that. Look at that. That is just the sexiest thing ever to come out of the ground. And let's go for a second one. I'm just going to take the top off here. 2 nice, big, generous slabs. See them right here. So beautiful. So, I'll just take a little bit of oven paper to set them on here. I'm going to sprinkle some salt on them. That's going to help dry them out a little bit. By sticking them in the oven, as I said, all I want to do is dry up some of the excess moisture, so it concentrates that natural tomato flavor. Put just a tiny bit of salt. And just a little drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. So we are cooking our tomato, but we're only going to give it 10 minutes. But first, we're going to do all the stuff that goes in the oven at the same time. So the only thing I need the oven for today is for my tomatoes, which I'm going to give 10 minutes. We're going to cut some croutons of this wonderful paillés sourdough bread. So follow me. It's very easy to make croutons. And the good thing about making croutons, if you make a nice big batch, is they last a long time if you keep them in an airtight container, especially one of those glass ones with those suctionable kind of lids, that sucks the air out, and they remain beautiful and crunchy for a long time. So anytime you make yourself a soup, a vegetable puree, or some salads, like a Caesar salad, croutons are welcome. They have that extra bit of crunch. See, I'm just cutting my little squares here. And these croutons we're going to flavor with a bit of oregano and some paprika. And it's a way of having some extra flavor in our gorgeous tomato chuletón, or, as I said, if you're going to use them for any other kind of dish that you want. See, we just extend them here in our tray. Just put some oregano leaves in there, which will stick to them. Once we apply the oil, paprika, also known in Spain as pimentón dulce. And now, sprinkle some olive oil in there. Black pepper, why not? And just toss them in there so that they just get nice and lubricated. The oil is going to help it get some extra crispiness. And there we have it. Croutons and tomato ready. To go in our oven. And last but not least, we have our gorgeous green pistachio nuts, which we're going to use for our praline. So, first thing to go in is the tomato, and we always put the most moisture of ingredients when we're going to do various things at the same time in an oven. We're going to put the tomatoes on the top because moisture rises, and we don't want moisture for our croutons. We want them to get nice and dry and crunchy. So, in there. Set your timers for 10 minutes. I'm going to use a timer. Where is it? Here. I'm going to use the one in my phone. I can't do anything without a timer because my mind starts to drift when I get in the zone and stuff, and all of a sudden, oh no, you know, and once things burn, all your hopes and dreams fall crashing to the ground. So 10 minutes there. A great moment for a pause and a toast. Salud. See, as it opens, as it spends more time reaching the oxygen, you start to get different flavors. And it's opening my appetite. Fabulous. That's why I love cooking while drinking a glass of wine. It's actually my favorite time to enjoy a glass of wine. Obviously, celebrations and family and birthdays and at the table and stuff. But the moment you haven't eaten yet and you start to sort of visualize how all these ingredients are going to come together while you're sipping away and you're preparing, and after each steps you have a little sip and stuff. I cannot think of a better way to enjoy wine, a glass of red wine. Now, the next step I think should be the tapenade. We're going to do our blitzing. As I said, we're going to have a tapenade with a bit of a puree kind of texture, and then we're going to have a green oil made with the stalks of our spring onions. So, to do this, I'm going to need a mixing glass. Let's start with the tapenade. Here I have some unpipped Kalamata olives, very typical from Greece, incredibly aromatic, incredibly flavorful. Now, I recommend you buy one of these, okay? Just so that, because usually Kalamata olives don't come unseeded. So, you got to do your own unseeding, but no problem. You just take them and just stick them in here. And that's it, unseeded, okay? And there we have about a handful of olives, you know, the kind you would get in a bar, you know, like as a little appetizer while you're waiting for your meal. So olives go in there. We're going to add some oregano because this is a maximum expression of Mediterranean countryside. You know, you think of the olive, whenever you drive through Spain or Greece or southern Italy, you know, and you see all those wonderful dry olive leaves and all the sort of natural herbs that grow in the countryside. This is what I love about the tapenade. You know, it's a good expression of the land. And we're gonna thicken this out with a little bit of bread as well. So now that I think of it, I'm gonna cut myself an extra slice just to add in there into the oven with my croutons, because the crunchier the better for our texture. We could stick it in just like this, but then it would be a bit more pasty. I want it to be a little bit drier. Stick that in there. Right, here we go. Let's pause tapenade while that toasts a little bit more. Let's move over to our green oil with our Chinese spring onions. So very simple. All we're going to use is the green part, the green leafy part. Obviously, if you're familiar with Asian cuisine, all this part is gorgeous. You always add it to your, stir-fried rice, stir-fried noodles, ramen soup and stuff. And fortunately, now we have a lot of these ingredients in our supermarkets here, and we can use them for these other recipes. Now, because I want it to be extra green, and because there's always parsley on hand, we're going to have the green onion and a good generous amount of parsley. Because parsley, apart from being an incredible antioxidant for our bodies, it's also very high in vitamin C. So I'm all for having lots of vitamins running through our bodies. When I was staging in a 3 Michelin starred restaurant, a lot of the things that I would do whenever there was, whenever you had all your mise en place all ready made and stuff, is like, okay, we'll go and pick leaves off the parsley. I always have fun memories because it's the moment where you get to kind of have a break while you're still working, and because they were making lots of parsley oil, and they were always very strict about saying we only need the leaves, we don't want the stalks at all. So, but in this case we don't mind having a bit of stalks. This green onion oil is going to serve as a good contrast for the tomato redness, but as I said, it also has the strength of the onion flavor without us having to have the actual crunch. I mean, we might incorporate a few strains of the white part for visual effects and also just to complete the plate. I'm improvising a little bit. So see, I've just taken like a nice sort of bunch. These, by the way, we don't throw out. We can use these in our soup when we're making stock, or you take the finer parts and cut them, and you can also sprinkle them on a salad. So I'm a firm believer in what the Japanese call mottainai. Nothing goes to waste. We use everything in the kitchen. So what we're going to do, these were previously washed, by the way. But if you haven't, wash your leaves. Always wash your leaves before cooking them, because even though they come from the countryside, they might have bugs or pesticides or sand on them. So we're just going to coarsely chop this parsley up. We're going to blitz it anyway, so it doesn't have to be super finely chopped like in a restaurant or anything like that. In goes our parsley. And just coarsely chop these wonderful greens. I'm already smelling it. The good thing is these onions don't make you cry. Although if you work in a restaurant and you have to cut, especially if you work in an Asian restaurant and you have to cut like many kilos of these, they do eventually sort of get you a little bit teary. They do sting a little bit, but it's a little sting. It's not like when you're cutting the bigger onions. For that we wear goggles. Okay, so we've got a nice generous amount. We're going to have plenty of oil left over, which is great because you can use it for so many things. You can use it to finish off like a vegetable risotto, or even in our Spanish paellas. Sometimes in Catalan paellas we add what is known as a picada, which is usually like mashed up parsley leaves or any kind of green. You thicken it out with some nuts, and then you add it at the end to kind of thicken a little bit of the sauce that has been put in, the broth, shall we say. Okay, so all we're going to have here is our greens. We're going to be adding olive oil, and for this recipe I'm going to add some vinegar afterwards, just to bring up some of the acidity, some of the nice sour flavors. So we need a good amount of olive oil to get that blitzing. And we're using a very high quality oil, so this is going to be extra flavorsome. As I said, it's taking a simple ingredient and turning it into something extraordinary by adding some wonderful key players into the mix. So, yeah, that's about it. So that was more or less like maybe what, like 5 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Now, even though I think I sent the recipes and the quantities, I'm playing by ear. I'm just doing things intuitively. That's after a while, when you've been cooking for a long time, you learn to more or less just add and correct. Yeah. See, bear in mind, they're very juicy, these stalks of the green onion. So we already have like a nice little kind of like a vinaigrette. Not vinaigrette because it doesn't have the vinegar yet. But it's a nice kind of green puree, which is ideal just for so many things. Okay, and that is beautiful. 10 minutes. 10 minutes are over. Let's check on our tomatoes. Beautiful. Check them out. And our pistachio nuts are nice and toasted. What about our croutons? Oh yes. Everything at the same time is nice and ready. See? Let those cool down and they'll be even crunchier. Over there. Our pistachios are no longer that sexy green because they're a little bit more toasted, so that's going to bring out extra flavor. They're going to go straight into our mortar. Also, we're going to let them cool down so that they're extra crunchier and easier to crush, because we want to have a nice kind of pistachio dust. Now, tomatoes, let's look at them. See, so what we've done is we've lightly cooked them by absorbing all that extra humidity, right? But it's still firm. It's going to have a bit more of a softer texture in the mouth, shall we say. Almost like a dry-aged steak, if you want to think of it that way. So we're going to leave that one there. Let's go back to our onion. Check this out. See, this is a gorgeous puree. So in this form, you could keep it this way in the fridge, and the oil will set, so it'll get a little bit more solid, but it loosens out as soon as you add it to any kind of warm dish. As I said, you can finish off a risotto, you can finish off a pasta. It's almost like a pesto, if you want to think of it that way, right? All you need to add is a bit more parmesan, some pine nuts and stuff, and all of a sudden you have a green onion pesto. But what I'm interested in is having an oil that I can drizzle over our tomato as a season. So what I'm going to do is take a spoonful, 2 spoonfuls of this. I'm going to add some beautiful garnacha wine vinegar. It's about a tablespoon of that. Mix that up nice and well. And a little bit more oil just to loosen up that puree. Wonderful. Gorgeous. Beautiful green. The color of nature. All is well. Okay, set that aside. That's perfectly well reserved. Now, here I have my crunchy bread to finish off my tapenade. So just cut this coarsely. Obviously, we're going to be putting tapenade into this as an accompaniment to the tomato, just a couple of dots on the plate. But obviously, you can make amounts of this and just dip bread into it. It's wonderful to have as a spread, as a little starter. If you're having friends over or anything, it's the ideal thing. You know, like people when they have like metzes, like they'll do a hummus, they'll do a baba ganoush. Well, if you have a tapenade, it's another one of those great Mediterranean spreads that work very well. How's our interaction going? Okay, you're already posting plenty of questions. I have one here. It's like, how can I make sure to choose the perfect tomatoes in the market? Any suggestions to finding the perfect one? Well, when you're shopping for tomatoes, obviously the redder the better, but also you want them, usually vegetable mongers don't like people touching the vegetables, but I always sneak a little touch. You know, you want it to be firm. You don't want it to be, you know, too soft and pulp and beaten, shall we say. You want it to have a certain firmness. But if you do find them where they're a bit greener on the top, you don't have to worry because tomatoes keep on ripening even when they're off the branch. So you can have a nice sort of, you can continue the aging process until they're perfectly red like this one, which is when it's perfect for consumption. Hence, look at these. Gorgeous. Also, another tip that I have for conserving tomatoes at home is I leave them on the windowsill outside, because then they're exposed to the natural kind of climate that they would be if they were in the field or growing on their tomato racks, shall we say. So I've found out that it's way better than keeping them in the fridge or indoors, you know, because at night they have the natural refrigeration of the night temperatures, and during the day, if they're lucky to get a bit of sunlight as well, if your balcony is oriented towards sunlight, well then all the better. You're recreating the natural kind of habitat for a tomato, or any kind of fruit, by the way. Now, tapenade. I've got our oregano, our black olive kalamata, it was a handful, and a generous amount of, you know, 1 loaf of bread. And once again, we're going to be blitzing. There we go. Let's blitz this baby until we have a nice kind of more consistent puree texture. I'm not going to add any oil yet. I'm going to see how this behaves with the natural moisture of the olives. That's going to need some help. Now, olive oil is one of those wonderful gifts of the gods because it's, as I said, it's an antioxidant. If you ever have the chance to visit Spain, you always wonder, why do people have such great skin here? It's the olive oil. It's in our diet. Every day we have olive oil with our breakfast, with our lunch, with our dinner. We cook in it. We put it on our salads. We put it in our breakfast. There we go. Okay, we can do it. See, this is why I like adding bit by bit, because then I can sort of see what kind of texture I'm getting. And it's just lovely when you have all these kind of ingredients all year round. This is the thing about Kalamata olives. They last forever in a fridge, in their brine. And it's always good to have lying around because you can make a formidable pasta dish just with black olives and a bit of tomato. It's like we're always using the same ingredients, but in different combinations or in different amounts, and you get totally different results. Yeah, a bit more. There we go. Now, I hope some of you are participating and cooking as we cook here in Barcelona, because you're going to have a nice little lunch starter. There we go. Fantabulous. Now that's the texture that I wanted. You're going to see how all this comes together. See, we have like a consistent kind of puree, okay? It's just basically our minced Kalamata olives with our bread to thicken it up. Some oregano, some olive oil. Oh, and the anchovy. I almost forgot. The most important thing in a tapenade is the glorious extra kick of the anchovy umami. See, anchovies, here we eat them in many ways. We have them on their own like this. Sometimes we pay top dollar for some good anchovies. But as an ingredient for sauces, it's an incredible booster because you have a different kind of salt quality. They're heavily salted already, but because they have that that kind of sea salt kind of strength with the flavor from the natural protein of the anchovy, it's a great source of what the Japanese call umami, right? That fifth flavor that I imagine you're all familiar with by now if you're into food. Hang on. To blitz that, we're going to add just a little bit more oil. So it's a great way of adding salt with an extra layer, that extra layer that we know as umami. And we're going to go with some black pepper in there, why not? One of the things that I'm enjoying cooking with a lot lately is garums. Garums, it's like what what is known in Thai cuisine as fish sauce. The Romans invented, most food historians have come up with the theory that the Romans were using garums back in the days, many years ago. And basically it was fermented anchovies. That would produce a liquid which was used in cooking in many of the recipes, many of the Roman recipes. So just like the Vietnamese or the Thai cuisine has that, you know, they don't use salt as much. They either have soy sauce or fish sauce. And they're both fermented sauces, you know, the liquids from fermenting things like soybeans in the case of soy sauce, or anchovies or dried prawns in the case of the nuoc cham, no? The Thailand fish sauce. But here in Europe, we have our own version of it, and it's the garums. And they're starting to become popular again. They're starting to become popular amongst, like, for instance, companies that tin anchovies, and they excel at it. Well, they figured out ways of creating their own anchovy garum. And yeah, we're going to start seeing more of those in supermarkets as time progresses, because it's a great flavor enhancer. It's a way of using something alternative to just salt. You have more layers, and all you need to do is sprinkle it on some fish, some meat. It works in any kind of dish. There we go. So now, yes, now we have an ideal tapenade mix. Let's just taste that. Lovely. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take one of these pastry bags, and fill it with my tapenade so that I can put some dots on there. Where is it? A spoon. Ooh. Whoop, making a mess here. Oh, good. It all goes inside. See what we got here? Nice little do the locomotion, and there we have it, ready for putting some dots on when the time comes. I'll use one of these pegs, and my gosh, we've already spent more than 40 minutes. So I'm just going to leave that here. Let's get ready now for our tartare. Okay. We've got our lovely green oil. We've got our tapenade here. Let's crush our praline. Here we go. My nice and toasted pistachio nuts. Here we go. Let's just leave this out of the way. Pistachio nuts. So I'm just going to add a generous pinch of salt. Once again, always freshly ground black pepper. And then start lightly beating them down. Because if you go too hard, they start jumping out. Beating them down. Wow, I'm already getting the aroma of the toasted pistachio. This is going to be so awesome. So the reason I'm going to make a praline with pistachios is because it's always great finding ways of introducing dried nuts into any kind of recipe. It's a great source of energy. And when I discovered how to make this kind of aliño, as we say here, like a way of dressing, I just put it on everything. And because the usual dressing for a beef tartare is quite prominent and it's quite characteristic, you know, you got your parent sauce, your egg yolk, your Tabasco, all those things are great, but I don't want the tomato to lose its protagonism in this dish. So, see, check that out. Look at that. See, that's the kind of dust we want. Ooh. Oh, it smells so good. This is wonderful. Okay. So to make a standard praline, usually like industrial machines, when they like blitz lots of dried fruits like walnuts, hazelnuts and stuff, after a while from the heat, they let out their own oils, their own natural oils, and that's how you get a natural praline. Here we're cheating. We're crushing the pistachios, but I'm gonna cheat by adding my own olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, to get that lovely texture. See? And we have our praline. See how shiny and beautiful it is? Okay, that's ready. Now for our beef tartare. Tenderloin beef, nice and tender. We used to, at a restaurant, what we would do is we'd have them frozen, and then that way we could cut perfect dice, shall we say, like nice and straight. But that's when you're working in haute couture, high-end restaurants. You don't need that. It's super tender. We're just going to give it some fine cuts, lengthways and across. Okay. Coarsely ground, you know, I don't want it to be like a minced meat. I don't want it to look like it's been passed through a butcher's mincer. I want it to be a little bit chunky so that when I chew, I can feel that I'm chewing on a little piece of hand-cut meat. It's part of the pleasure. So I'm just taking that amount. That's about enough for the plate that we're going to be doing. Just give it a few more cuts across. Okay, so there we have our beautiful aged sirloin beef. Solomillo de buey. Now, here's the bowl where we're going to be mixing it with our praline. So, just about a spoonful of that. We're going to use the yolk of 1 egg, free range, of course. Get rid of the excess whites. Obviously, we do not throw that. That can be used for either we can make some pastry, we can make some biscuits, we can make a ton of things using just the egg whites. So we keep that in the fridge for later. Now, remember I already added salt to my pistachios, so I don't need to add any more. I'll obviously taste and see if it needs more seasoning. So here we have our mixture of egg yolk and pistachio praline, which is what we're going to use to dress our beef tartare. Bit of olive oil. A little bit more of the pepper. See, now I've got a very thick kind of paste. See? Which is fabulous. You could put this on a biscuit, some foie gras on there, and you're floating in space. But I want it to be a little bit looser, so when that happens, all I need to do is just add a little bit of water to loosen it up. 1 spoonful. There we go. And now we have a little bit of a looser praline with egg yolk. It's more of a dressing. You can sprinkle this on a salad, on some green asparagus, any kind of vegetable. Today we're using it for our tartare. Oh my goodness. Okay, now I'm thinking I do want a little bit of sourness in here, but rather than use vinegar, I remember a restaurant where we would put a little bit of lemon juice in the beef tartare, and it works wonders. So even though the tomato has a natural acidity and I want the meat to be as smooth as possible, I just want it to play backing fiddle to the main soprano here, we're going to add just a slight bit of freshly squeezed lemon. Remember that lemon naturally cooks meat and fish in a way because it changes their nature. It's like a ceviche, you know, when you're making fish. Well, with the meat, the same thing. But if you add it right at the end, you still retain some of the natural rawness of the beef, but with a little bit of the acidity of the lemon, bringing out some of its flavor. So. Oh, but it tastes like pistachio. So in we go. There we go. I'm gonna cut a bit more of that beef. It cuts so easily. First of all, the knife is very good, but also this is the most tender of cuts. Hence, tenderloin. It's great when things have the names that they deserve. It's like amusement park, a park that amuses. When you have kids, you understand it. All of a sudden it's like, oh, of course, amusement is such an important thing to keep your child amused and distracted. And all of a sudden it's like, why don't we go to the amusement park where they will be amused all day long, and that way I can have a break. Now, this is it. This is it. The smell of the toasted pistachio. Let's see. Talk about wine pairings. I'm having a ball right now. Okay. Shall we plate? Yes. It's time. The time has come to plate. We're going to relieve ourselves from this. I'm going to use a beautiful plate that has the colors of springtime. Hang on a second. I have my tartare, I have my tomatoes, I have my beautiful oil. Let me see, make sure that that's... And I have my sprigs. Okay, there we go. It's the best feeling when you've got everything prepared and all that moment when it's like, okay, let's start the plating. Let's put this beautiful thing here. I'm just going to take one of these. Obviously, if you're doing it for friends, make as many as possible, but we're just going to be using the one. Okay. I'm going to cut a little tip from my pastry bag of tapenade. All right, ready? Hang on. Now, the first thing, we're going to dress our tomato with our beautiful green oil. plenty there, because then when you're eating it, you're going to be able to like move a piece of tomato around. So I'm just going to put 3 spots in there. I'm going to try and make it look as aesthetic as possible. Now, our tapenade points. I'm going to put 1 in here, 1 over here, 1 here. The flavors of the Mediterranean represented in different points. Okay, there we go. See, plenty left over for this afternoon. Haha, tapenade sandwiches. Where's the other little, oh, here. Hang on. Now, where to put the beef? Aha, this is the best part. God, this smells good. So I'm going to make a little canal. I'm going to put 1 here. We're going to put another one there. And here we have our beautiful mustard baby leaves. Where's those scissors? Let's see. Which are going to help us have some last minute flavors and aromas there into each bite. So I'm going to cut a bunch of these. I'm going to lay them down here. And a bunch of these ones. Put them here. And this is when we get all like fancy restaurant, you know, when you see all these chefs, like, it's always really stressful, because sometimes, you know, if you've ever worked in a fancy restaurant, it gets intense. You know, there's a lot of tables to feed all at the same time. So this kind of like, oh, we have all the time in the world to like delicately put these little stems here, like we're in a photo shoot. It's like, that's not the reality. Usually you're like throwing things on. But since we are not in a restaurant, we can take the time to do this delicately, make our plate look as aesthetic, because food presentation is important. I mean, the thing has to be super delicious, but at the same time, it's got to look nice. See, imagine this. Imagine you're on the pass. There's a table of 10, a family waiting. They've been waiting for 20 minutes. Why isn't their food coming out? Oh, it's because I'm putting all these lovely, delicate petals on the salad. No. Where's the other spoon? There we go. No, this. And I'm missing a 3rd spot. Just a 3rd spot of another little canal. And we're done. Almost. We're going to put this one here. It's this thing we have in professional restaurants where, you know, we don't like the symmetry of 2. It has to be like 3. Usually a table of 3 gets to share this plate. Here, just add these randomly. Another one there. I crossed town just to buy these things. You know, I had everything in my neighborhood except these baby little sprouts. Okay. Ooh, last but not least, croutons. The most important, you know, this plate isn't complete without the crunch. So once again, we're going to be all delicate like and add, we made a whole bunch of them, but we're just going to have 1, 2, 3 for aesthetic reasons. There we go. Add another one down there. Add one down there. especially for the tartare. Tartare without some crunchy bread. Woohoo! Lovely, lovely, lovely. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our gorgeous chuletón de tomate, accompanied by a beautiful tenderloin beef tartare, dressed with pistachio praline, some croutons, some green oil, and there you have it. Look how beautiful it is. I hope you enjoy. Is there any other question that you'd like to ask before we finish this? Let's see. Will only sourdough bread work for this? No, any kind of bread croutons are ideal. Thing about sourdough is once they're done right, they're super crunchy, like hard crunch, a good hard crunch. Like I've used brioche, like the bread that we used for toast that you find in regular supermarkets. First of all, they lose their crunch a lot quicker, and especially if you live near the seaside, if you leave them out for more than half an hour, they get soft. The sourdough bread ones, they hold their crunch a lot longer. What olive oil to use for the croutons? I always say, always make sure it's extra virgin olive oil. They cannot put extra virgin olive oil on the label if it's not. So it's a great guarantee whenever it says it. And arbequina is the one that I've been using most of the time. Arbequina is those small olives that grow a lot here in this part of Spain. They're imported all over the world. Always look, arbequina. They're very aromatic. It has a lot of flour, shall we say, in the flavor of it, and they're very resilient. They're good for cooking, but I prefer always using mainly in raw kind of dressings like salads or pralines, or to douse over our croutons like we did just now. And that's about it, yeah? Okay, so if we're all good over here, my name's Johann Wald. It's been a pleasure to be here in alliance with Campo Viejo Reserva. It's a wine that I enjoy so much, as you can see, and I hope this has brought out the spirit of cooking that all of you might have, and maybe you're like, I never have time to cook. Always make time to cook. Always make time to have that glass of wine after work before making dinner. It's the best glass ever. And obviously if you do it with friends, even more so. It's been a pleasure cooking for you. Thank you for joining us.